I had almost completely forgotten about Terminator Dark Fate until I read this article from Bounding Into Comics. Director Tim Miller blames get woke and go broke sentiment for Terminator Dark Fate's box office bomb. Yes, blame the sentiment, Tim. Don't blame how bad your film was or anything. During a recent episode of The Business with Kim Masters podcast, the host shared Miller's analysis on the box office failure of Terminator Dark Fate, as well as audience reaction to the film. Masters' discussion with Miller begins around the 9-minute 40 mark. The clip begins with Miller saying, "There was a lot of get woke and go broke sentiment that didn't help us, but when asked to explain what that means, Miller responds, there was a lot of issues with having 3 women in lead positions and all of that stuff." He adds, there is quite a toxic atmosphere around this film online, which I was really surprised at. I shouldn't be, but I was. Look, the diversity casting, having Linda Hamilton come back and play an action hero in her 60s, which in my opinion wasn't very believable, and having Arnold Schwarzenegger play more of a secondary role in the film where he really doesn't have much screen time, that stuff was always going to annoy fans to a certain degree. Also, there's very little originality in the film. We've seen it all before, and if you want to make money in Hollywood, just give the audiences what they want. And to be honest, I don't think audiences really wanted another Terminator film. Terminator 2 Judgment Day can never be matched, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many people. Masters then posits the idea that fans are lying in wait to pounce on directors and creatives because they know what they don't want. Audience criticism and feedback is going to range from things that you like to hear to things that you don't like to hear. However, giving the majority of the fan base of a franchise what they don't want to see is not going to bode well for the box office returns. Miller agrees with this assertion, saying, "Yeah, and unfortunately, I think it is a small minority, but it's a very vocal minority and they make a lot of noise and it's hard. You know, I don't dwell online on the negativity, but it's human nature to read a little bit." Tim, if they are a vocal minority, then they would have had very little impact on the vast majority of the cinema-going public. Many people didn't want to see your film, and the reactions of many of the audience who did go to see the film ranged from a lukewarm reception to a negative reception. You made a bad film. Stop blaming portions of the audience. Honestly, the logic is just out of this world. Anyway, speaking of out of this world, it's time now to visit the final frontier. This is a word about today's sponsor for this video, Star Trek Fleet Command, a free-to-play massive multiplayer online game that's available for iOS and Android devices. Download it from the link below. Set in the iconic Trek universe, you recruit legends like James T. Kirk, Spock, Sulu, Scotty, and more. The game has an emphasis on exploration of the galaxy, as well as building, upgrading, and repairing your fleet of starships. Vessels like the Jellyfish, the USS Franklin from Star Trek Beyond, the Klingon Beryl-class bird of prey, and of course the Federation's flagship, the mighty Constitution-class USS Enterprise. And the graphical detail in the game really brings these ships to life. The Federation is on the brink of war with the Romulan and Klingon empires. You'll carefully manage your resources in your starbase and develop new weapons, unlock, build, upgrade, and repair your fleet as you seek to defeat your enemies. The game emphasizes careful space combat and strategy with plenty of potential for exploration as you boldly go where no one has gone before, recruiting cadets and legendary officers. I've spent the day destroying Rigelian ships, to be honest, with the help of Mr. Sulu. You also join alliances and battle other players, not just the computer. I really appreciate the game's attention to detail when it comes to the authentic recreation of the starships and the accurate representation of the characters. It feels like a great deal of work went into building the game world and making it true to the mythology. Download Star Trek Fleet Command from the link below. Anyway, welcome back. Let's continue with the article. Miller also admits that he knows some of the stuff he did with Terminator Dark Fate would be controversial. We did some stuff that I knew would be controversial. Well, one thing I think was definitely controversial was the killing off of the franchise's pivotal character at the beginning of the film, John Connor. I found this a very cynical move, absolutely unnecessary, and because of the woke times that we live in, he gets replaced by a young, diverse female character in the film as the central character in the saving of the future of humanity. I believe this was a big disservice to the Edward Furlong version of John Connor from the Terminator 2 film, and it sullies the legacy of that film to a certain extent. Unpopular decisions like this led to understandable grievances for the audience. Now let's move on to another story on wokeness. This article is from the Daily Mail. BBC drama boss Piers Wenger hits back at criticism of its woke versions of classics, insisting older stories must be adapted for modern audiences. Piers Wenger said older stories must be adapted for a contemporary audience. BBC recently adapted classic novels to appeal to diversity-obsessed viewers. Examples from the last year include The War of the Worlds and A Christmas Carol. The BBC's head of drama has defended criticism that it is preoccupied with appearing woke after repurposing classic texts to boost roles for women and ethnic minorities. Why? Why is it necessary? Why can't older stories just be left alone? Piers Wenger said older stories must be adapted for a contemporary audience. The broadcaster recently adapted novels to appeal to diversity-obsessed viewers, swapping male leads for female stars and casting ethnic minority actors in traditionally white roles. Examples from the last year include The War of the Worlds and A Christmas Carol. Mr. Wenger, the BBC's controller of drama commissioning, said, "They are adaptations of books that were written a long time ago, hundreds of years ago, but we are repurposing them for a contemporary audience. And I would argue by doing so, presenting an inaccurate representation of history. These classic fictional stories should not be changed just to pander to political correctness. The past is the past, and we should not be trying to misrepresent the past to make it look like present-day diverse Britain. There was nothing wrong with the ethnic makeup of Britain in the past when these stories were first told. I believe they should be presented accurately the way they were. And this is not the first time the BBC has done this. Previously, the BBC TV series Merlin cast the character of Guinevere with a woman of colour. Historically, the fictional character of Guinevere was always depicted with a red-haired woman. Looking at the origin of the name Gwynefar, it means fair white. Several years ago, the BBC depicted an ethnically diverse Roman Britain in the cartoon Life in Roman Britain. I want to give an additional example of this happening, and for that, I'm going to include an excerpt now from a previous video I made about Doctor Who.
Interesting.
What is?
Regency England. A bit more black than they show in the movies.
So was Jesus. History's a whitewash.
It's interesting, isn't it? Jesus has been depicted as being a good deal more light-skinned than he probably was. So I guess that must mean that London in 1814 must not have been almost entirely white? Well, Jesus probably was a brown man, but London in the early 1800s was definitely overwhelmingly white. London wasn't ethnically diverse up until recent decades. The depiction in this episode is an historical lie, and I find it quite Orwellian actually. He who controls the past controls the future. It's the idea that London was always diverse and so therefore always should be. And I think there's a reason why such political statements are being made in such episodes. Here's an excerpt from a BBC article about an interview with former showrunner Stephen Moffat from back in 2016. Moffat said the show must find new ways to get ethnic minority actors on screen in future. We've kind of got to tell a lie. We'll go back into history and there will be black people where, historically, there wouldn't have been. And we won't dwell on that. We'll say, to hell with it. This is the imaginary, better version of the world. By believing in it, we'll summon it forth. I find this really astounding. Apparently, misrepresenting historical events and making Regency London diverse is better than London being the way it actually was in the 1800s, which is to say homogenous, ethnically English. London is no longer an English city, it's 45% English. Is there a suggestion here that the way it is now is the way it always should have been? Until England lost control of its borders and swung them open to international finance capital, England was English. The clue is in the name. The people make a place, and if different groups of people had always lived in England or London, then it wouldn't have been English. Speaking of Doctor Who, I'm going to move on now to this Deadline article. BBC drama chief defends Doctor Who, says it's a long way from being rested amid ratings drop. Yes, but it's doubtful the series will regain those lost viewers anytime soon, especially if nothing fundamentally changes. The current Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, has divided fans, and many people aren't happy with the writing of the show. Even putting aside all the woke stuff in the series at the moment, it's just not a well-written show anymore. Ultimately, people don't tune out of a series because they're enjoying the entertainment value. The first episode of Series 12, Spyfall Part 1, had a rating of 6.89 million viewers in the UK. The 9th episode, Ascension of the Cybermen, had a rating of 4.99 million viewers. That's including consolidated numbers. So the show has lost almost 2 million viewers in the UK in just 8 weeks. The BBC's drama chief Piers Wenger has defended Doctor Who following a drop in ratings and a mixed reception from fans for season 12 of the sci-fi drama. At a BBC drama event in London on Monday, Wenger was asked if he would consider resting Doctor Who given some of the malaise around the show, which is produced by BBC Studios and airs in the US on BBC America. Wenger offered a strong rebuttal in which he argued that the Time Lord franchise, starring Jodie Whittaker and overseen by showrunner Chris Chibnall, is in fine fettle. Here are his remarks in full. I worked on Doctor Who myself and produced it for many years, and I can honestly say I don't think it's been in better health editorially. The production values have never been better. It's also not just funded by the BBC, it's funded by lots of international partners. The show might have some nice production values and some good special effects, but the fans aren't happy with the stories and the writing. It's ultimately the only thing that matters, the quality of the storytelling. Anyway, he went on to say, it's an incredibly important show for young audiences. It's still watched by families in a world where there are fewer shows that have the power to do that. It will always be an important show for us, and we're a very long way from wanting to rest it. I used to love Doctor Who under the Tennant era especially. New Who has been on the air since 2005. I think the show might be long overdue for a long rest period. It can be hard for writers to come up with original ideas and stay creative for so many years. Add to that the fact that the show has recently embraced current year political correctness and wokeness, and that's only made things worse for the series. So whether it's Terminator Dark Fate's failure at the box office or Doctor Who's declining ratings, these are the consequences of going woke. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on these stories below. Be sure to follow me over on gabandminds.com. The links to my social media are below. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.